Jessica and Martha, two Latina therapists bringing awareness to the Latina community.
By exposing, breaking, and healing generational cycles. Thank you for being here.
Hi, welcome back to Latina Therapists.
Bienvenidos. I am Jessica.
And I'm Martha.
Thank you for being here today with us.
Today we are going to talk about a really cool, fun topic, and it's that cultural disconnect that we continue to feel as Latinas in the United States.
Yeah. So we were inspired by our conversations and even things that we were seeing with our clients. And we were just talking about how there is a cultural disconnect as first gens with our parents.
Yeah.
Even though we're from the same family, even though we're from the same culture, we're still very culturally different, and I think that affects people in different ways.
Yeah, I think that our parents really want us to feel connected to the roots still, and they have a lot of expectations from us, and they think that we can relate to them at the same level. And we started to realize as we grow older, we're like, we missed that because we didn't grow up there, so we don't really know what you're talking about. Or if we do, it doesn't click as much as they would like it to.
Yeah. I'm thinking about how lonely and frustrating that disconnect is sometimes. Because I think it makes...
For both, or for, like, just the child?
Maybe for both, but I think I would only see it as the child perspective right now. Well, I think it's something important to think about, right? Because I think my experience, I'm usually hearing the kid, like even their adult kids, right? The child's perspective. And I have the child's perspective. But in family therapy, I do see that clash between the parent and the kid.
Right.
Of different ages. It could be a teenager, it could be adult. But I sense like there's almost like this frustration and disconnect.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, the parent feels frustrated.
Yes.
Right?
Like, why are you not listening? Why are you not hearing or getting me or really understanding what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then for the kid, it's lonely, you're saying. And I'm thinking it could be lonely when the parent doesn't understand what the kid is going through because they don't know the school, maybe like the school that they're going through, or like the challenges that they're going through in their own like social groups.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that would be pretty lonely for sure.
For sure. Like I'm thinking of an example of even school, right? I think most of our parents didn't really go to school, and you know, as first gens or dreamers, second gens, that you're going to school and then you're going through the motions of learning and the learning gaps and, you know, working to get good grades and then, you know, college, and not being able to share those frustrations with your parent.
Right.
I think it's really frustrating. Because you could be really upset about maybe something not going your way or getting a bad grade or having trouble understanding the subject, and then your parent doesn't mean bad, but maybe what they'll say is, well, just work harder, you know, like just keep studying, like, or yeah, you can get that 100, you can get that A, and nothing wrong is being said, but there's not that connection of that you end up feeling, or people end up feeling like, I don't think you really understand how hard this is.
Well, for me, the experience was a little bit different. They didn't push for hundreds.
Okay.
The cultural gap there was that they didn't see how important school was. So they were just like, well, just leave it then. If you don't want to work on it, if you don't get it, it's okay, mija.
Okay.
Just let it go.
Did you feel like you needed that, you know?
I had no idea. I was just like, okay, cool. But, of course, my grades reflected it.
Got it.
So, yeah, to them, My mom has I think, elementary school education. My dad has, like, middle school education. So studies were just, not that they were against it, not that they, like, cared for it. They were indifferent. Like,
Really?
the cultural significance of education was not there. They were just like, if you're doing a good job, good for you. If you're not, don't worry about it, you know? It just, that cultural gap was, they just didn't understand that here, when you're in school, grades are important.
Got it.
And to be successful, you should probably try. You know, you should probably do well in school.
So maybe the disconnect for you was maybe your parents not really understanding
The education system.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that it's important
Yeah.
and that it's a priority here.
Right.
Got it. It is more like work, maybe?
No, they're just, I don't know, maybe just like happiness.
Okay.
Comfort, maybe.
I see.
Uh-huh.
I see.
Yeah.
But I think those are, you know, like both of us are different examples, but it goes to like how disconnected you can feel and because of the cultural difference.
Yeah, I can imagine that if they were born here,
Mm-hmm.
right, and they grew up in the system, in the educational system, they would understand, like, okay, so you do homework so that you get good grades, so that you can
Got
have a
it.
good GPA, so then maybe you want to go to college or you don't go to college. It doesn't matter. But this is the system that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
But because they were not in that system, they just didn't understand the importance of it.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I think what I experienced is because they didn't know the system, I think it was more they didn't understand the struggles of it.
Yeah.
Everything was no big deal. Just keep doing it. You're going to get it. And so there was almost like this lack of awareness of how the school system worked
Right.
and how difficult it was to be a student, because I think their perspective was, you're just a student. What else do you have to worry about? Do
right.
good at what you're supposed to do. Like, you have one job.
Yeah.
You know, like, I remember the messaging was, you know, I do everything. I take care of the house. Your dad takes care of the bills. Your only job is to be a student. And so it was just like, what do you mean you're struggling with your only job?
Right.
You know?
That work ethic, right? Of like, you work hard, you get results. But the actual work of it was not there.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, if you think about it, you know, school here is very different from a parent's, like, home country.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know, like, stories that I heard from my parents is people were playing cards, they were just showing up, and they were just, you know, spending time over there and then kind of coming back and going to work. But that's not how school is here, right? And especially nowadays, like with my teenage clients, it sounds like they get a lot of work.
A lot of homework.
A lot of homework, and more than what I remembered getting. But even then, it was still a lot of projects. It was a lot of work, and they just didn't understand that.
Yeah, I can imagine that's. Well, I mean, I know that's like one of the cultural gaps that we see.
Yeah.
The other gap that I experience now is that parenting gap too.
Okay.
They have creencias.
Okay.
Right? So you have, like, your parents are growing up in Mexico or wherever, and they raise their kids through conventional wisdom. So they're like, dale té de manzanilla, it's better, or no importa el azúcar, like, it doesn't matter how much sugar. But here we have, like, all these standards. We have so many instructions, and we have, like, so many people telling us, like, don't do this, do that. So that in itself is such a difference, a disconnect. And I'm like, they tell me I have to do this, and then my mom's like, don't worry about it. You know?
like brushing it off.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, we survived doing it this way.
Okay.
So there's always that clash. Like, I'm not saying you're doing it better, or I did it better, or I'm doing it better, but there's no understanding because we have two different frameworks of what we were taught in parenting too.
Yeah, I think that reminds me too of just, I think the cultural differences in just medical, but I think mental health too, right? Because then, I hear a lot of my clients kind of get scared of telling their family members they go to therapy.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they're like, oh, my parents still don't know.
Like, I haven't told my parent yet. And I was like, okay. And it's just like this fear, but I think it's part of the cultural difference and the gap between immigrant parents and their kids.
Yeah.
Right. And now that I'm kind of thinking about it, is like, I don't tell my mom that I go to therapy.
Yeah.
And so it's not something I talk about with her.
Yeah.
But I think it's because I don't know if I don't think she'll judge me, but I just don't think she'll relate to it. She's not like, I don't see it
a beneficial conversation to have.
Yeah. Like, I don't, like, what is she gonna tell me,
Right.
And so I just don't share. But yeah, I do notice that, a lot of my clients, like, or they'll process, they're like, okay, I think I'm gonna tell them, and then like they prepare. It's not something that, most easily just say, yeah,
I realize that when people tell me that they're not telling their parents or they're not sharing, I don't even ask why.
Oh, really?
As you're talking, I'm like, I don't even ask, like, oh, why would you not? I automatically assume, like, yeah, you're right.
Oh, really?
It is funny. So common, right, that we're just, like, accepting of the fact that I get it. You're not going to tell them.
Maybe I'm nosy, but I always want to know.
You
How
do?
come? Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then they're like, oh, well, this and that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Do you want to tell them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I have some older clients, too, that are just like, they still don't know. I heard they don't want me to work. I don't want them to worry. I'm like, oh.
I actually have some clients have told me too that when they have shared, and so because I think they're trying to you be proud of it,
Yeah.
like, I'm going to therapy,
Right.
I'm working through some stuff, and they're very kind of intentional about sharing that with family, and then some of them kind of say, ay, pero ¿por qué? You don't, no necesitas eso. Like, you don't need that. And, like, that's a lot of their responses of, like, oh, you don't need that. Like, why? Like, oh, you don't, where are you going? It doesn't work.
I wonder if, and I don't know this, right, but I wonder if in the countries of origin, when you go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist because of limited resources or limited even education back then, but it's when it's really serious, right? Like, and I'm thinking more of like psychosis or like schizophrenia, that they're like, you have to take them now. There's no other option. Versus here, it's a maintenance thing.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that that's the framework that they're coming from, that they're just like, you're not having a psychosis episode, so you don't need it.
Okay, like it's not justifiable maybe?
Yeah, like it's not visible. So if it's not visible, then it's not happening.
Okay.
Because back then, like, if it's visible, then you have to pay attention. You have to do something about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess that's what I'm thinking when you said, like, no necesitas. And it's like, it's an invisible thing, right? But
yes.
It's just education, I guess.
Education, right? And I think, something that I've been reading about the first gen experience too, and relating to parents, is that I think part of the disconnection that is culturally too, is because culture means so many different things.
Sure.
It's also maybe like there's sometimes an intelligent gap, right? Of the level of education and the level of resources and the level of research and understanding and education and knowledge, and it can be so different, and that's been my experience, and I think a lot of my clients' experience of, yeah, like how do you kind of talk about some of these topics with parents that don't have the education or the knowledge
Right.
to kind of contribute with it, right? And I think it makes it so many different emotions, right? But it can be frustrating and, sad sometimes, and lonely.
I think that the more education I have acquired, that gap seems a lot bigger, for sure. Because we just end up thinking like a lot of the knowledge that we've picked up along the years is common knowledge.
Yeah.
And we forget, like, no, it really isn't common knowledge. We learned it somewhere.
For sure.
So I could see how there's that gap, and it is really lonely and sad because at that point it's like, how do you adjust your conversations?
Yeah. It's interesting because when you said that, I was thinking of my mom and my brother, and so my mom is like the queen of like natural remedies and the teas and the herbs and the garlic, and my brother's a nurse.
Oh, geez, yeah.
And so, oftentimes, a lot of the things she talks about is like a new recipe she found, like a new remedy. And
they see it on TV too.
Yes, and now on Facebook.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like everything, YouTube. And she's very holistic and natural, and so she tries them. And she talks about it a lot, and then it's funny seeing how my brother handles that.
Yeah,
because it's his field, right? Like medicine, his field, like illnesses and like remedies and medication. And so she's like, oh, hey, like, I saw this recipe, this remedy, and, like, it tackles, like, blood pressure or whatever. And she'll, like, tell him, like, the recipe, and she's like, you should try it.
Yeah.
Or, like, she's like, oh, yeah, I have a friend that this, and this is gone now.
Right.
And then my brother is, he's so patient with her.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does he handle it? Yeah.
Yeah, see, he's very patient with her, and he's just like, oh, okay. Like, he lets her have it. But I can see how just that gap, right? Because then he goes down to her level, and he's just like, oh, okay. And he's like, oh, Mom, well, this and this. And, like, he'll explain a little bit. And I can tell my mom shuts down, and she's just like, oh, well, I want to try it just to see.
Yeah.
She's also so hopeful. And he's like, okay. And, like, I noticed that, like, if I go into the conversation, he'll then start breaking the medical terms down with me. He's just like, well, this, and then this, and, like, he'll start, doing his nurse talk. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then, like, there is a difference between, like, the way he talks to my mom about it and the way he talks to me about it and how he manages those conversations.
Yeah. My mom has the same stuff. So, and my brother's he's a orthodontist, right? So it's still, like, in the medical healthcare field. And she will say stuff to him like, well, if you put some lime on it, or something about a cabbage one time. She's like, boil cabbage and put it on, or so. I mean, she just has, like, recipes, right? And he's like, his response is patient, but also very, like, there's a boundary there. Okay. So he's always like, Mom, not with me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Stop with your stuff. I get it. Not with me. And me, I'll call her. I'm like, hey, Mom, what was that purple stuff you used to put on our cuts? And it's just, like, random things. Or I'll just ask her. I'm like, oh, there's a spider bite. She's like, okay, heat up some onion and put it on. I mean, it's just, I don't know if it works or not, but I'm just going to try it anyway. Yeah. But sure enough, like, I have heard there's this isolation that she experiences because sometimes, like, those conversations, like, what she can offer in a conversation is so limited to something that maybe we would be interested in at the time. So then she'll talk to us about, like, celebrity stuff, like the farándula that she sees on El Gordo y la Flaca, or, like, politics or news.
Yeah.
So we kind of go for like the strengths that she has versus like we're talking about something else and she tells us of, you know, a recipe that she heard on Facebook,
For
right?
sure.
Stuff like that. So I can imagine how sad or like lonely, like you said, it is for her too to experience that. Like, how is it that I'm not relatable anymore? And nothing happened besides my kids started growing up and living life in the United States, different cultures, different ideas, different education, information, all of that stuff.
And I think it goes even beyond, you know, like even education or knowledge, but I think like culture too.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like me and my brother could be talking about like pop culture.
Right.
Like, oh, have you heard this and this? And, you know, we talk and then like my mom's just there listening to us.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so cute because she's just like, that's her way of being a part of it. Like she'll just sit with us and just listen.
Right.
And but you know, I guess I'm just processing like, oh, like I wonder how she feels not really knowing what we're talking about or feeling like she can say something about it. And so yeah, I think it goes in like other conversations too. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be like just about education.
Right, yeah. Like, you know, we're not longer listening to Los Bukis anymore. You know, like growing up as a little kid, they can really influence us. But now, when we started getting our own identity and our own preferences, we started leaving them behind, kind of.
Right.
But also because we do have that upbringing and we do have that foundation of the Hispanic culture, do you ever find that when you are in non-Hispanic groups, now as an adult or like, you know, in high school or whatever, you felt that gap? Like that cultural gap? It's like, come on, nobody knows about Los Bukis? Nobody knows about Vicente? Like, you don't know this?
For
you
sure.
know? And you're just like, oh, okay. Or, you know, now if people reference like a country singer from like the 90s, my response is, oh, I didn't know English back then.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, because I didn't. I'm just like, I don't really know.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm like, no clue what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's a very powerful thing too, because then I think for me how it happened growing up too was that, but also we didn't have cable growing up.
Oh yeah.
And I hated it because it was like I'm like this, you know, first gen that's, I guess, getting Americanized without the Americanized part. And like I'm here hearing and like people are like watching all these shows and I was like, I want to watch them, but I can't, and I just couldn't be a part of it because it's like I didn't have access to cable, and so I felt left out a lot because it's like I want to watch the shows like everyone's talking about, but you know.
But I'm watching Sábado Gigante.
Yes, or novelas with my mom.
Right. Yeah. Although I wouldn't trade that.
Yeah. They were pretty cool back then.
Yeah. I just think, you know, when you grow up in a predominantly Hispanic area, it doesn't feel as lonely or not isolating. What is it? What's the word? Like
fitting in or something?
Yeah, like you're excluded or something, right? But when you start moving to a different area, a different school that has like more diversity, that's when that cultural gap, that disconnect starts enhancing even more.
Got it.
I went to predominantly Hispanic school in elementary school, and then in 4th grade we moved to a more diverse area. And sure, like I started noticing the differences or even the jokes or even, and I'm just like,
got it,
I don't know what you're talking about. And I mean, in 4th grade I think I was like 10. So for 10 years I didn't really know any of the pop culture of the U.S.
Okay.
The American pop culture.
Yeah.
So then now growing up, I'm just like, I know we're the same age. I just do not have that relatability.
You still feel it now.
For sure. I'm just like, I mean, if you talk to me maybe about like hip hop, right?
Okay,
like if you talk to me about like Tupac and Biggie, I'll know.
Yeah.
But otherwise, anything outside of that, like, I was like, look, talk to me about novelas, Sábado Gigante, like Mexican music. And then from then that decade.
Okay. That reminds me, I guess, my music journey too, because I think also like just like the cultural differences too, like Spanish was my first language. We still speak Spanish, you know, with my parents. Growing up, it was a Spanish speaking household, and so it was just Spanish music. I didn't listen to English music until I remember it was a summer we went to Phoenix, and my mom has family in Phoenix, and I don't remember how old I was. Maybe I was in 5th grade or something. I think I was in elementary school, but up to that point, I only listened to Spanish music. And then my cousins are a few years older than me. They're like maybe 3 to 5 years older than me. And they were kind of like in middle school, some in high school already. So they were kind of older, and they've already kind of established their music taste. And I remember them listening to rap. And it was my first time like listening to English music, and I was just like, oh cool, this is cool. And like that was like my exposure to like rap and hip-hop. It was through my cousins. And then I remember going to it was Kmart at the time.
Yeah.
And so I bought a few CDs, and they were English, and they were my first English CDs. And then it was just such a culture shock to kind of experience that music that I wouldn't experience you know, outside of my parents' home. And I remember when we got back, like my mom was almost like, I don't know, not ashamed, but like it was an issue for her. Like she was like, are you okay? Like you're listening to English music now, and you've never listened to English music. And like that culture gap, right? Of like, you know how they would say like rap is bad, rap, you know. And she's just like, are you gonna listen to rap now? Like, what are they saying? And like I remember her not trying to, but she made me feel bad for just going outside of Spanish music.
She didn't understand it.
She didn't understand it. It was new for her too.
Yeah.
And it was new and shocking.
Oh my goodness. She's like, I'm losing her.
Yes.
She's losing her identity. Yeah. That happens, right? Like, especially when you start getting older and you do start transitioning further into the popular culture. I think there is this like sadness that comes from the parent, like, oh, they're saying bye to our roots.
Maybe. I think so.
You know? Or it's like, why don't you want to have this tradition anymore? Why are you not cooking Mexican food at your house? Why don't you have Mexican ingredients in your house, you know? And it's just kind of like, it's not my reality. But yeah, I have to stock up on like ingredients when my mom comes to visit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I don't cook with that stuff, right? I'm just like, I've become really lazy when it comes to that food. So I'm sure it's nostalgic, probably.
Yeah, I think it also, at least for me, and I think I've heard this in sessions before of, I don't know, there's like sad of maybe not feeling relatable. Like sometimes like I felt like I just couldn't talk to my mom about some things. Not that I now wanted to, but even like, you know, from a kid until now as an adult, like there's just a few things that I just feel like it's just not relatable, or like it didn't mesh well with the culture and the value system she kind of grew up with. You know, like a few examples would be like when I was learning English and I was having a hard time, like it's not something I could talk to her about. Yeah. Because it's not something she was able to help me with. Like she didn't know English too well, like I'm very much at that time. And so I couldn't say like, oh my God, this stupid word, bear and bear, you know, like why are they so basically the same word just spelled differently, right? And so you know, she wasn't gonna share that frustration with me or kind of really know how to help me out. And then, like, I remember, you know, getting on birth control really young, and she was really judgmental about that. You know, like, it made her freak out. I think she was scared, and you know, it was something that she was not supportive because it kind of clashed with the values, right? Or even, you know, like moving in without getting married. And so that was like a big no-no for her. Like, her mom did not let her leave the house until she got married. And so it was shocking to her, and, you know, the culture in general, like, you don't do that. And, you know, it made things sometimes hard to talk to her about, you know, because of that, you know, cultural clash a little bit.
It makes me think how much we withhold from them. Little by little, we start learning what we can and cannot say.
Yeah.
How we interact and what we deprive them of. And it's almost like they don't know half of us. You know? I can't imagine having... Actually, I don't think I ever have a conversation about my medical stuff with my mom.
Okay.
Right? Because it's like... I've had experiences with, like, OBs and gynecologists and stuff, and I would never have a conversation with her about it.
Really? Yeah.
But same thing, right? It was just, like, she would just not... I haven't even thought about what she would say. I think little by little you start learning, like, this is not a topic I talk to her about, you know, or like my dad or something like that. There's like experiences from school, like with the language stuff, right? That are they're so impactful for me that I still hold on to that memory. And I don't think I've ever shared it with her again because she would not understand it. Like, she wouldn't get the nuance of the word, right?
Yes, exactly.
So it's like, you just don't share it. But when you encompass all of those experiences from my life, I'm like, dang, I really don't share everything of me to you because we're so culturally different.
And it makes you wonder, right? Like, is it only the cultural difference? Is it something else? Like, why don't I? You know, and maybe the answer is different for different people, but I think for me it's just, I don't think I'm gonna get what I need, and I know that, and so maybe I will tell my mom something, but then I'll keep it short, or I keep it like, you know, like I won't go.
You edit it.
I
That's funny. I didn't even think about that. And as you said, like, maybe for somebody else it would be different. I'm thinking, like, maybe it's not the culture, right? If somebody does have a parent that that is pretty open or has different values or is a good listener, maybe.
For sure.
Maybe they would have that very open relationship with them.
And that's where my mind was going, of maybe how and those things that I have tried, because I wanted to have a good relationship with my mom. I wanted to communicate with her and just tell her, like, hey, this is what's going on, these are the decisions I'm making. But I think some of her responses kind of discouraged me from that.
Right.
And I wish they didn't.
Right, because imagine the type of conversations and relationship that you could actually develop if it was more open. And it's such a weird thing, because I don't think I have a really good relationship with my mom. I don't think it's a bad one, but I do see, you know, like, where she's in and where she's not, based on this cultural gap that we have, the differences. Which I guess it makes you wonder. We talk about limiting and boundaries and all that stuff with relationships, so it's kind of like, maybe that's how relationships are in general, right? Like, maybe you have very few relationships where everything is out in the open and you have that really connection that you can share everything, because everything that you talk about, you are going to receive appropriately or warmly.
Right.
And then you just kind of start learning yeah, you can say this to that person and not, you know, whatever. But definitely with your parents, and they're supposed to be the closest, right?
Yeah.
They have such different values that they grew up with that, like, you just kind of grow out of.
Yeah. But I think this topic is so interesting about, you know, and I think it's something that maybe people don't notice, because I do try to bring it in sessions. You know, I bring it to, you know, clients' attention of, hey, you know, like, yes, you're in the same household and same culture as your parent, but I'm seeing that there is still like a cultural difference between you and your parent. And, you know, when we do talk about that, it kind of like blows people's minds. Because I think when we think different culture, it's like, I think we think different race.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but, you know, culture is so many different things. And, you know, it's like, yeah, like two people are, or maybe it's more white, but like different people in one family are growing up different, culturally different too, and you know, that affects the household.
Right. The generations will be different, the music will be different, language experiences, everything that all contributes to the culture that you're encompassing or embracing at that moment.
Yes. And you know, add, you know, generation there. So you know, like an Americanized generation versus like someone, you know, from like their home country, you know, it's gonna be different.
Yeah. I've heard, well, we have a mutual friend that she talks about that cultural gap of understanding the holidays.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Of like Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, I had no idea this was a thing and why.
Yes.
And then you just think about like the kids' reality, and they're like, why does my mom not understand that I need a costume and I need to go door to door?
Yeah.
Or clients, it's the parents for me, and they're like, so there's this thing called homecoming, and we didn't know. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do you mean you didn't know? So the kids are asking for these things, expecting that it's common knowledge.
Okay.
And the parents are like, I had no idea this was a thing, and now I have to adjust and add and give. And so I was like, all right, we can talk about it. We can coach you through homecoming and everything that you need to provide.
That brought a memory to my mind when you said the holidays, because like my parents knew like what Thanksgiving was and all that good stuff. But I was thinking back, and I think I'm the one that pushed celebrating Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it used to be like, yeah, day off, and then it turned into like, oh, I think like my mom would like barbecue and make costillas and whatever, and it was still like Mexican food. But then like I was just like, oh, like we should make a turkey, and then like I was just like bringing in like, I guess just the American culture.
Sure.
And slowly, you know, I just noticed over the years it has developed, and now we have like Thanksgiving dinner. We make the turkey and the sides, but like I guess it just made me realize like I'm the one that was just like, hey, like, you know, like my friends and
I was going to say, it probably was like, my friends have a turkey.
Yes. We have costillas. Which is, you know, still yummy, and, you know, like, I love it. But, you know, it's just that, I don't know, like that culture.
I'll be honest, like Thanksgiving, I get excited about Thanksgiving, but because my mom makes tamales.
Okay.
And then we all kind of just sit around, we're like, should we make a turkey? I guess we have to make a turkey for tradition.
Funny.
But really, I would just like the tamales and dinner, you know, like we'll be grateful over tamales. Is that okay?
My mom makes them for Christmas, which is funny because like, I don't know, like even here, like we still just do the 24th.
Yeah.
And then and then like the 25th is just like just like a rest day.
Right.
And it was funny because last year, my boyfriend is not Hispanic, he's not Mexican. And then so Christmas is Christmas, the 25th, right? And but he's still like, so like he knows the 24th is like what we do, and like we do the stuff on the 24th, but for me it's so different because then on the 25th I still have to be now like Christmas mode still.
Yes, yeah.
Even though it's culturally it's not like, you know, something I'm used to, but now I'm like, okay, well it's technically Christmas today,
right?
And like, you know, and it's just like, okay, Christmas. And it's funny because my brother came over Christmas Day last year, and then like he was just like chilling, and then like not in Christmas mode. Like he was just like, yeah, Christmas is over. And like he was explaining to my boyfriend, yeah, it's just like a rest day for us. Like, yeah, Christmas was yesterday.
Being in a mixed marriage, it works perfectly for us.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no negotiating, there's no fighting between families. It's like 24th is with the Mexican family, the 25th is with the white family. So I'm super grateful for that cultural gap.
It works well, but
yeah, you do just having to code switch that way, or like adapt to. Oh yes, now we have to do the 25th. That was a shift for me for sure.
Yeah, like oh yeah, it's still going on.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I thought we were just doing recalentado, but all right.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess it just kind of speaks to us being so adaptable.
I think so. Like we had to be.
Yeah, just little chameleons wherever we go.
Yes. Is there any other cultural difference that maybe you can think of?
No, I was thinking the thing that, you know, when we started talking about the topic was like for sure parenting. I see that in my clients. I experience it. I know that the gap or the disconnect really shows with our parents.
Yeah.
I think that was like the key takeaway for me with this topic. I mean, we experience it in everyday life with our own social circles. Little things come up and you're just like, oh, you know, I know the difference. But I think that's just going to happen from being from different cultures, period. You know?
For sure.
But that big gap definitely shows in our family of origin.
Yes.
I think that's where the biggest leap has been for me.
Absolutely. And you know, I think that gap is like cultural, it's educational, it's emotionally intelligent. Like I think it hits a lot of things, because then I think this is where like boundaries become so difficult, right? Because you're trying to set boundaries with someone that doesn't really get them.
Right.
You know, or maybe doesn't have like the emotional awareness that they're good. You know, they might see them as rejection. And so, I think, you know, a lot can come with this cultural difference. And I think it's worth talking about it, because it's like, yes, like, you know, you're not crazy. You know, you're experiencing like this cultural gap, and it includes a lot of things.
Right. I think it's so helpful with any of the topics that we talk about. It's just like normalizing it and bringing it to life.
Yeah.
Because you've mentioned this before, like sometimes we're talking to our clients and it is so embedded in their life that they don't see that there's a different way of living or identifying something that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So once we kind of like take it apart and really highlight it, and you're just like, this is actually a cultural gap, and this is what you're feeling, you know, and all of what you just said is valid, and it's frustrating, and it's lonely, and it's isolating, and, you know, you're mourning, probably grieving that separation from your parents. Like, all of that is so worth talking about and highlighting it for our clients and for us too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You're like, why do I feel so separated from my parents? Well, because of this, you know?
Yeah.
Not that you don't love them, not that they're not good parents, or you guys are not a close family. It's just like people evolve, and sometimes that can really hurt.
Yeah. I think, you know, I used to wonder, I don't know if it was some sort of maybe wishing or jealousy, but I used to wonder, like, do my American friends have this big of a gap with their parents?
Yeah.
And so it's something that I've always wondered, because even with my teenagers, like they talk a lot about their friends that are American with American parents, and they're like, oh my God, they have a great relationship, and they understand that they want to go out and have a life and do things, and well, my parent, you know, and so I do wonder, you know, it's something I wondered, you know, with my friends growing up, like, do they experience this? And then I'm seeing it with my teenagers, kind of get that, you know, observation too with their friends.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely worth highlighting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in, and we hope that you subscribe right here to our channel for new conversations, new topics, and if you ever want to hear about anything else that maybe you're experiencing and we haven't talked about, always add it in the comments, send us a DM, and follow us on Instagram.
See you soon.
See ya.